Okay.
And President Hart, we are ready when you are.
All right. Good evening. The date is January 18th and the time is 5:11 p.m. I want to welcome everybody here and thank you so much for being live with us via Zoom for our January P-CCS Parent Council meeting. My name's Judy Hart and I am serving as this year's P-CCS Parent Council President. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, P-CCS Parent Council serves, it's an organization served by P-CCS parents in order to facilitate communication between our district and our families. All parents and caregivers who have P-CCS students are welcome to attend our meetings as well as to be involved and communicate. So I thank everyone here for being here. Again, I'm Judy Hart. I'm serving as this year's Parent Council President. I currently have students who are in the Salem and Pioneer schools, but we have been through a number of schools. I'd now like to introduce our Vice President.
Good evening. My name is Pam Cornell Allen, and I am part of the board serving as the Vice President. My students go to West Middle School and Canton High School.
Andrea Schultz, I'm the recording secretary, and I've got kids at the park at Canton and a middle schooler at Discovery.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Garrity. I'm the corresponding secretary, so I'm the one that sends you all the emails about the upcoming meetings and with the agendas and the minutes. And I have a son, 5th grader at Farrand and a 3rd grader at Gallimore.
Hello, everyone. My name is Antoinette Jackson, and on the board, I serve as our membership coordinator. I have a son at Salem High School. I have a daughter at Liberty Middle School, and I have a son at Dodson Elementary School. So happy to see everybody. Hi, Monica.
So we thank everyone for being with us today. We are holding our meeting via Zoom in January now due to the higher number of cases of coronavirus in our community. But we did have our first few meetings in person, which are normally held at the board office, and we hope to continue that throughout the year as things get better. So again, I'd like to welcome some other participants in our meeting today. Nick Brandon, who is our Executive Director of Communications and Marketing, who helps us both technologically as well as just foundationally with all of our meetings and communication in between. So Nick, thank you for being here, and I'll let you introduce some of the administrators and core team who are here tonight.
Thank you, President Hart, and thanks so much to the Parent Council Board for all the work and preparation that you put into these meetings. Once again, we have a very thoughtful and very relevant agenda for today's meeting. So thank you guys for your work and making Parent Council happen. I would like to ask that all the district representatives introduce themselves at this time. And of course, we will start with Superintendent Merritt.
Hello, everyone. Monica Merritt. Welcome to our Parent Council meeting. I appreciate everything that Nick has shared, and I also just appreciate your flexibility in scheduling. I know that was a big goal last year to try to make sure that we can get more involvement by scheduling these meetings in the morning and the evening. So I just appreciate being a part, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Hi, Joshua Meyer. I'm the Director of School Safety and Security for the district. Welcome to the Parent Council meeting, and I'm honored to be here to speak with you tonight.
Hi, I'm Eric Kolke. I'm the Safety and Security Manager at PSEP Campus. I'm looking forward to this meeting. I hope to get all your questions answered.
Perfect. And we want to let our guests and community know that this meeting will be posted onto the P-CCS official YouTube channel, probably sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. And we welcome the community to view that meeting and for everybody in this meeting to spread the word that All of our parent council meetings are now available for viewing on the YouTube channel. I'll kick it back to President Hart.
Okay, before we get to the substance of our agenda tonight, we have just a couple parent council details, which we normally go through before our agenda items. We have November's meeting minutes, which do need to be approved. The November meeting minutes were sent out by Anne Marie Garrity to each of the parent council representatives. Nick, if you would, I had sent you the November minutes in your email. As I'm describing them, you could put it up there for people to see if they're interested. And I also just wanted to let everyone know, if you are watching in the near future on our P-CCS YouTube channel, you may approve the minutes if you are a parent council official rep for your school, and by emailing us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com. But we have our November meeting minutes. Each of the reps were also emailed those minutes previously by Andrea Schultz, who takes our minutes. Let's see. Were you able to find those, Nick?
I was not. I have the November ones and I didn't have access to them. So if anybody is able to reshare those quickly, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, the November ones that was actually our last meeting. So in any case, each of the representatives, as well as each of our board members, have viewed them. And it's a matter of our board members approving the meeting minutes. So do each of the board members have a copy of the November minutes, or would you like me to share them? I'll take a look here. Here we go.
Yeah, I needed to
have 'em.
request access. So yeah, if you got them, that'd be great. I can put them on the screen right now.
Okay. Let's see. Here we go. All right, I just sent those. Sorry, the wonder of a Zoom meeting.
No problem.
So here we have the November 19th minutes. Those who may have viewed the November meeting as well, if you are not on the attendance, if you haven't emailed us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com, you can let us know that you viewed and communicated the information from November's meeting. For those of us board members here and reps here, those in favor of approval of the November meeting minutes, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. We will now log these November minutes, posting them on our website, and we'll also send another copy to anyone who was at the meeting today as well. All school representatives as well as board members received the November minutes in December. Okay, and then I will allow Andrea to take attendance. I'm just going to repeat that if you happen to be here and you're an official rep representing your school, you can say here. If you happen to be watching the meeting on the YouTube channel in the future, please email us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com to let us know that you were in attendance for this meeting. Okay, Andrea.
Okay, Bentley, Bird, Dodson,
Present.
Erickson. That was for Dodson.
Yes.
Erickson, Farrend,
Here.
Field, Gallimore,
Here.
Hoban, Hulsing, Isbister, Miller, Smith, Tonda, Workman, Discovery, I am here, East, Liberty,
Here.
Pioneer,
Here.
West,
Here.
Canton, I am here, Plymouth, Salem,
Here.
Here double.
and, and Starkweather. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will now get right into our agenda items for tonight. We have several speakers who are going to be talking to us today about safety and security. I want to thank Mr. Josh Meyer for being here. He was also here in November, but given the events of December, we felt it absolutely imperative to have him back and talk about not only some of the relevant events that have happened here in Michigan, but as well as with our P-CCS safety and security after our students experiencing a lockdown in December. I do want to make sure that I address the fact that although this topic I know is incredibly important to all of us, not only high school families, but middle school and elementary as well, our whole community has been impacted in the last month and a half. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we do recognize that, as with all parent council meetings, when we are talking about an incident, I would really caution and just call everyone's attention to the fact that we are not only talking about the P-CCS event in general, but we're talking about an event that involved P-CCS students. We all take student privacy incredibly seriously. We are talking about student families, and I want us to make sure that we are very respectful and empathetic of that. So with that being said, I do want us to address the topics that impact our community as far as safety and security, but also be incredibly respectful for the other topics that might coincide with that. So with that in mind, I want to thank Josh Meyer for being here again. I promise, Josh, I hope very much that we will not be asking you back for a third meeting this year, but I really appreciate your commitment to being at our meetings. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. It's my pleasure. And, don't hesitate to have me back as much as you need to touch on these important issues with our families. And because it, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, when I go through a couple of different things, it truly takes a village to keep our schools safe and make sure that we're doing everything that we can. And that starts at home with conversations with families and then translates into our schools and what our security teams are doing and what we're doing with our staff and law enforcement. Before I get into and touch on kind of the events of what occurred on December 9th, I want to turn it over to Eric to talk a little bit, just to give a brief update on Alice training and some of the things we're doing. Eric comes to us from the Canton Police Department, where he retired as a police sergeant. He handled all of our district's Alice training prior to coming on board with the district when he worked for the Canton Police Department, and he is truly a subject matter expert in this arena. And so he has a prior commitment, another meeting that he has to be to, I believe in like 5 minutes. So I want to shoot it over to him real quick, just to give a quick overview, kind of high level overview of what Alice and some of the things we're doing in the district. And then I'll jump back in. So go ahead, Eric, if you want to jump in and do that.
Thanks, Josh. So Alice program is an 8-hour training day, and it goes over a lot of things like the OODA loop and what your mind's doing when situations going on. What I've been doing, like Josh said, for about 15 years from the police department standpoint, teaching the schools, we do a condensed version of that, which hits the high points. And basically the training it's mainly talking about run, hide, fight concepts and having a plan ready to go prior to this incident happening. Right now, what we're doing, we did train retrain all of the high school teachers, and I'm working with all the elementary school teachers for the next, looks like 2 to 3 months here, coming in and doing my program and speaking about these things with them. So it is a condensed version. It still hits the fine points. The biggest thing is with this training is making you think about a plan. We talk about the five different plans for each incident, 5 different ways to get out of the school, 5 different ways to barricade and hide in a building, and which rooms we'd use for that, and also 5 different ways, items in your room you could use as weapons if needed to. So training's ongoing right now. Like I said, this isn't their first time. This is a recertification because I've been doing it for them for years now. But we are hitting every school, every teacher, every staff member. It is a process, but we are getting those done currently. So basically making sure they have a plan. And I'll be quite honest with you, Josh, I'll get more into it. I was very impressed with how that lockdown went down in December, not only from a standpoint of the teachers and administration and staff, but more so with the kids. The kids were amazing. They did a great job. They barricaded. I'll be honest with you, after 4 or 5 hours, I thought we'd have a few coming out telling me what they really think of me because they were stuck in a classroom, but I got nothing but praise from them. Thank you for keeping us safe. You guys are our heroes and such like that. And that was impressive for me. I've only been here, 4 months, 5 months now at the school, and just hearing that and knowing these kids. And the biggest things we talk about, and everybody should know, these kids are the Columbine generation. They know these things are happening. They know it's not, I don't want to say it's not as traumatizing because that's absolutely false, but it's not as shocking, I guess, as it was when Columbine originally happened in '99. So these kids are aware of it. They're doing a great job. I'm 3 high schools, 6,200 kids locked down in only a few minutes, and multiple police agencies on scene right away. I mean, by the time I left Plymouth with Ethan Walsh, when the SROs went over to Canton, I had 7 police officers standing there with me, and I'm proud to say I was the main trainer for the Canton Police Department when it came down to their response to the schools and active shooter situations, and they did a heck of a job too. So everybody played out really well. It was a very tense, very stressful scene. Trust me, being the brand new security manager and hoping to keep my job, this was it would have been a lot more stressful if things had gone worse, but everybody did a great job. So training will keep going on. I'm scheduled all the way out to April right now, doing the elementary schools because we do a 2-day version of it. PowerPoint the first day, and the second day is basically we come in and show you how to barricade, how to do tie-offs, things like that, lockdowns, items in your room, and having those plans made up. So.
Thank you, Eric. So the Alice training, I want to emphasize that the district has been doing Alice training for several years now. And so this is not something new post Oxford or post lockdown that we're doing. When I started in the district, we have to review and update our emergency operation plans. And so when Eric started in August, one of the things that I tasked him with is updating all of our Alice training throughout the district as part of our emergency operation plan review. So this was already kind of in the works when the Oxford tragedy in Oxford occurred. We were already in the process of discussing emergency operations plans, reunification sites, and preparing to do Alice training with a lot of our schools prior to that incident occurring. And so it kind of thrusted it fast forward when the tragedy in Oxford occurred, and then when our lockdown on December 9th occurred. And so when we took the opportunity to come back after a break and do this training with our staff members, and one of the questions that came up or was asked after we did the training is, why did we bring students back and go over this 6 different times with students? Why was it necessary to cover this in 6 different classrooms? And the answer is really simple. It's because every single classroom that student is going to be in throughout that day is different. And so the idea behind that is that we spent time with staff members covering the principles of ALICE, the principles of barricading a classroom, the principles of the run, hide, fight, what the things that they should do in a classroom. And then we actually spent some time in individual classrooms that are challenging for our staff. You know, they have a lot of windows, or they have more than one door that needs to be barricaded or locked. And we discussed options for that teacher or for that classroom to be able to handle a lockdown situation. When we brought the students back in, it was important for them to understand, because we are required by the state of Michigan to do 2 lockdown drills a year, one before December 1st and then one after January 1st. As a district, we do 3 lockdown drills a year at every single school. But keep in mind that at an elementary level, that's one classroom for that student. But at the high school, those students are in 6 different classrooms, each semester. And so we may only, in a lockdown drill, may only touch that student's classroom one time. So they're only seeing how to properly barricade or have those discussions with one teacher. So when we came back on January 3rd, the idea is that each teacher would discuss with the students options for that classroom, so that those students would understand that that classroom may be different than their 3rd hour classroom or their 4th hour classroom, and that there's different things that they may have to do or that may be expected of them in a lockdown. And we felt that that was very important. And it's actually something that we're going to incorporate into future trainings. When it comes to ALICE, we're starting a new standard within the district that every teacher or every staff member within the first 90 days of employment will have to have ALICE training. We are implementing refreshers that are going to be annual for ALICE training. That's part of our emergency operations plan rewrite that we did. So every year when we come back, we're going to touch on different topics, and we're going to talk and have these discussions with staffs as part of our professional development days. Talking with staff about what they should be doing in the classroom, discussing with students the expectations, so that the students know if a lockdown occurs in that classroom, what is expected of them? What is the expectation of those students? And so we're working on that. We're talking about working with Nick Brandon and his team to do a video, like short video series, so that when we do a lockdown drill, our school staff can play a short video, and that may address what the expectation of the students are. And the next lockdown may address barricade techniques. And so we're looking at different ways that we can incorporate this and get the message out to not only all of our staff, but our students regularly, so that they understand the expectations during a lockdown. So I know there were some questions, Judy, and we can get to those. I'll give you a quick rundown of, I know probably what most people want to know is what happened on December 9th. And while it's very much, as far as I know, as of today, it's still an open case or an open investigation with the Canton Police Department. So I am limited as to what I can say in terms of that, because I want to be respectful of their investigation and what they're doing. But I will give some very high level kind of scenario of what occurred. As Eric said, I couldn't be any prouder of the way our students and our staff responded to this lockdown. Incredible stressful time. We're coming off the heels of a tragedy in Oxford. It's not like this incident occurred in California. This happened right around the corner from our district. And so it hits close to home, and for our staff and students to respond the way that they did proves to me that the previous training and everything that our district did prior to me or prior to Eric, or just the things that have been implemented along the years is working, and people were paying attention, and our staff, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't pat our staff and our students on the back for the incredible job that they did on December 9th. It's challenging to lock down a school that size, with a campus that size with 3 high schools, to do it the timely fashion that it was done, and then get enough law enforcement support there. It certainly poses its challenge, but I think everybody that afternoon stepped up and did exactly what they've been trained and what they've been expected to do. At 1:37 that afternoon, and we're using this as an approximate time because we've been able to now scour through hours of video. Let me back up, and before I talk about December 9th, I want to kind of walk us into the week following Oxford, the tragedy in Oxford, and then to December 9th, because I think that's important. As a district, immediately following Oxford, We under the leadership of Superintendent Merritt, we were able to establish a security operations center located on the PSEP campus, and that's kind of a hub for security. We have a lot of technology that's gone into that room that not only allows us to monitor situations at the park, but it allows us to monitor situations at any building within the district. And so I immediately, once I had heard about Oxford, I immediately went to the Security Operations Center. I met with Eric. We started discussing, the incident that occurred and what things that we needed to do or what we needed to be aware of, because we know, based off our prior experiences, that copycat type threats are going to happen. And we knew that we were not going to be immune to this as a district, that we were going to at least get one copycat threat made against our district in the coming days. And so we started pre-planning, discussing, working with district leadership to prepare for how we were going to respond to any type of threat that was made against our district. We had already worked, we made communications with not only the Canton Police Department, but the Plymouth Township Police Department and the City of Plymouth Police Department to increase our police patrols at our schools throughout the following week, to ensure that we had a visible police presence at our schools to assist us in dealing with any threats or any incidents that may occur at our schools. During the course of that week, starting that very afternoon, we received our first threat against a school, if you will, that we responded to with the police department. Throughout that week, leading up to December 9th, we had over 30 different threats that were made to schools, against schools, at schools. We were able to, a lot of these were done via social media, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. A lot of these turned out to be copycat threats, things that people had taken off of the internet, recreated it on a cell phone, and then messaged it out to their friends. It then grew traction. So through the course of that week, we worked, the security teams and the district leadership worked with local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal law enforcement to vet and investigate these threats. We spent numerous man hours. Some cases we worked through the night with the idea of ensuring our staff and students were going to be safe when they walked through those doors at our school. Even before they walked through the doors, when they got onto a school bus and started their transportation route to a school, that they were going to be safe. And we didn't leave any stone unturned. And sometimes that required me to call the superintendent at 4:00 in the morning and say, Monica, I'm sorry I'm waking you up, but we need to talk. And in a couple cases, we had to make the difficult decision to close school. And in the case of the park, we were, when we early dismissed, I don't remember the date off the top of my head, we had vetted threats throughout the night, and we were very comfortable, based on the law enforcement investigations and what we did, that our students were safe going into that school that morning. What transpired that day is we had numerous walkouts planned by students. It started out with one, then we had two, then we had three, then we had four. And when you start considering from a security and a safety standpoint, students walking out is challenging in and of itself. It creates a disruption to the learning environment. And believe me, I'm not criticizing the students for their efforts and why the reasons they wanted to do a walkout. I believe that their intentions were pure, and what the students were trying to do to honor the victims of Oxford was pure and legitimate. But I have to look at that from a safety and security standpoint. I have to look at it from, how do I make sure that 6,200 students walking out of the building and gathering in a large group in one small area, are they going to be safe? And we had a plan in place with the Canton Police Department, the City of Plymouth, and Plymouth Township, all providing resources to accommodate the walkout. When we learned at a little after 7 a.m., there was another threat that came into the school, we were able to vet that extremely quick with utilizing some federal resources, and determine that that was a copycat threat that originated in New Mexico. It was something that an individual had taken a screenshot of a previous Snapchat and reposted it. Then we learned of 3 additional planned walkouts by students to honor Oxford. So Now we're looking at not only having to secure an area and protect students during one walkout, we have 3 additionals. And at that point, how disruptive is that for the remainder of the day? So the superintendent and the team, leadership team at the district, we all met with law enforcement and security, and the decision was made to early dismiss that day just because of the impacts that would have occurred had we stayed in school with walkouts, additional threats coming in, and all the things that were going on. We wanted to err on the side of safety for our students and for our staff. And I believe that we made the right decision that day in early dismissing our students and making that call. Throughout that week, we continued to work on additional threats. In one case, closing some schools because we simply weren't able to vet the information timely enough to make sure that students going to school that day were going to be safe. That afternoon, we vetted those threats and determined through law enforcement investigations and other means that they were deemed not credible. Leading up to December 9th, we were, I don't want to say threat free. We had looked at all of our threats. We had done our threat assessment on every single one. And it's important to know that every threat that we get to the district, we do a comprehensive threat assessment on. It doesn't matter if you're a kindergartner making a bomb threat or a high school student making a threat with a firearm. We are going to follow the same procedure every single time. And we do that, and we do that for a reason, so that we are ensuring that we are covering all of our bases, and we're doing everything that we need to do as a district to keep our students safe. So on December 9th at 1:37, we know that time because of some video evidence that we were able to recover that afternoon. A person observes what they believe to be a firearm on a student during passing time. That person then makes their way to another building, and it's at 1:45 in the afternoon, it's reported to an administrator what they observed. At that point, the administrator reports to Eric, and a lockdown is immediately called for all 3 buildings. That announcement went out through multiple means via the PA system in the buildings, email, and other means to announce that lockdown to students. We set up a operations command post at the Security Operations Center, and Eric, Eric that you just met, worked in coordination with local law enforcement. Eric was tasked with the operations end of the incident to work with law enforcement and secure not only all 3 buildings, well, I should say all 4 buildings, because we have phase 3 as well. Secure all 4 buildings in the perimeter. And within approximately 15 minutes, I want to say the lockdown itself, securing the buildings, was done rapidly. I was on scene from the time they called the lockdown to the time that I had made it to the high school was approximately 6 or 7 minutes. And the buildings were completely in lockdown at that point. We utilized local law enforcement resources from neighboring jurisdictions to secure the perimeters of the school. Keep in mind that at 1:45, we already had long lines of parents arriving to pick up students, which is normal. It's a normal day. Those parents were pretty much locked down in the perimeter throughout that incident at that point, because we had closed exits, we had closed entrances, and we have a lot, and that takes a significant law enforcement presence to do that. Based on the information that we had received, we deemed it to be at that time, we deemed it to be a serious matter, which warranted the continuation of the lockdown and complete investigation and cooperation with law enforcement. I can't go into details, all of the things that we did that day. I can assure you that we utilized every single resource available to us to identify persons involved and vet whether or not there was a weapon on our campus. We were able, within a couple hours, we were able to make contact with everybody that we believed to be involved in the incident. We were able to go through and interview multiple parties involved. And while this was occurring, we were also subsequently searching classrooms with law enforcement resources. And we made a decision early on to search until we could identify and get a contact with every single person that we believed was involved, we made a decision to search every classroom, because at that point we didn't know what classroom they may or may not have went into when the lockdown was activated or called. We knew what classrooms they were supposed to be in, but we didn't know if they maybe went into another classroom when the lockdown was activated. So until we were able to make contact with every person involved, we did a systematic search, assigning law enforcement teams throughout the building. Now, keep in mind, we had, the Canton Police Department did a phenomenal job at managing the law enforcement response. I worked hand in hand with the deputy chief of the police department that night, and we had agencies from all over Wayne County. We had agencies from Monroe County, Washington County, state police resources there, Homeland Security, FBI, DEA, ATF, you name it, there were agencies there. At one point, we had so many police officers, we were running out of assignments for those officers. We had to give them perimeter assignments because we had so many teams actively searching inside the building. Shortly before 5 o'clock, we were able to locate everybody that we believed to be involved in the incident. And at that point, we were not able to locate any firearm on the school grounds at that point, and we had searched every single classroom within the park. So every classroom, every room, every office. Now, keep in mind, we're searching closets, we're searching bathrooms, we're searching everything. So it's not just classrooms. We had to search every maintenance closet, every gym space, every locker room space. All of those spaces had to be accounted for in our searches, and a decision was made to do a staggered dismissal. So we talked as a leadership team. We certainly could have said, hey, the lockdown has been lifted, everybody's being dismissed. Keep in mind, we have 6,200 students that we had to get off of that campus in a controlled manner. We had multiple traffic issues throughout Canton Township. We had, at one point, I was told that we had traffic backed up on Canton Center almost to Cherry Hill. So to get all these students out safely, we decided to do a staggered dismissal and a controlled dismissal. We did it room by room. Let me go to my notes here. At 5:15, we started dismissing Canton High School. At 5:30, we began the dismissal of Plymouth. And at 6:05, we began the dismissal of Salem High School. At 6:45, all of the buses were out of the parking lot and en route to their destinations. And we worked with law enforcement to set up travel routes. So when we started letting vehicle traffic out of Plymouth, there was one way they could go. When we did Plymouth Canton and Salem, same thing, one way they could go. And then we sent our buses on a different route so that we tried to minimize those traffic backups and get traffic moving and flowing out of the campus as quickly as we could so that we could continue our investigation. I think it's important to know that while all this was going on and we were securing our buildings, searching our buildings, the Canton Police Department really had two operations going. They had the incident itself that they were trying to manage, and then they had another team of detectives, officers, and command staff that were managing an investigation. So immediately when this thing began, they immediately started investigating and securing. So there were two kind of focus efforts that were going on. It was as Eric said, it was a long day. When we started dismissing, the students, they were excellent. They were beyond excellent. The way that they handled themselves, the way that they behaved, the way that they acted that day, I couldn't have asked for anything better. Knowing that they were locked down in classrooms for several hours, unable to use the bathroom, in some cases, having to use a trash can to use the restroom. And we know that as a district, we know that's not ideal. But for the safety of everybody, when I have law enforcement teams searching a building, looking for somebody that potentially could have a firearm on them, the last thing that I want is a student walking out of a classroom and being mistaken for a bad guy or something bad happening. So we have to, for everybody's safety, keep those kids locked down in the classroom. We are working very diligently as a district to establish, I'm working with Superintendent Merritt, who's committed to this effort. We're going to build lockdown kits for each and every classroom within the district. And included in those kits, we'll have supplies including, the ability, again, not ideal, but we will have some privacy curtains and things like that where students could potentially use a bucket or other means to use the bathroom inside a classroom. Again, I know it's not ideal, but when we're talking about locking down and securing a building and keeping kids safe, unfortunately, those are some of the measures that we have to take to ensure everybody's safety and make sure that we get everybody home safely. So that's one thing we're doing that we learned from that incident, and we're building those out as we speak. We're also building out some additional resources for lockdowns within our district. But what I will say is I believe there was a lot of rumblings post-Oxford, pre-December 9th, that we're not ready for a lockdown. We're not ready for an incident. And quite frankly, our staff proved that they are. Our staff stepped up to the plate that day. They proved that they were ready. They proved that they can handle this professionally, and they proved that they can respond to that. Our students did the same. And as somebody who was on the ground watching it happen, I can't say anything more than that, other than we that day, not only did we get over 6,000 high school students home safely to their families without a scratch on any of them, we got over 16,000 kids home safely that day. And that's a Herculean task. And it's because of the efforts that the district has put into place to keep our kids safe, and to do those things. And again, there's things that we learn from it. There's things that we can do better, and we're gonna make those efforts, and we're committed to that. But I think by and large, although there's everybody, when you break this down, there's going to be a handful of people that are going to have complaints with how the district responded to this. And that's okay. We'll listen, we'll be an ear, we'll hear what they have to say, and we'll take it into consideration. Having seen lockdowns in my previous career, and I'm moving into this career that I'm in now, I'm incredibly impressed with the way that the PCCS staff handled that lockdown, and again, keeping our kids safe, and that's about as real as it gets. So I know, Judy, there was some questions, so I don't know if you want me to kind of run through those questions, if you want to ask the questions and I'll answer them, or how you want to go, but I'm happy to kind of answer any questions. I know there were some questions about our threat assessment matrix and some other questions.
Right, yeah, thank you very much. One of the questions that was sent in was for you, in fact, to clarify the events that happened in December at PCCS, and I think you have done that in great detail, and we appreciate that. The next question was, so given the fact that the investigation, which I believe is being headed by Canton Police, is still ongoing, does the district have a risk assessment and safety plan to evaluate the possible threat that could be potential, regardless if the Canton Police investigation is ongoing or has ended?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. We've had a threat assessment matrix that was established two directors prior to me. It's been updated since then, and that threat assessment / risk assessment is done regardless of any independent police investigation. So anytime there's a threat or a perceived threat, our building administrators know that we have to go back to that threat assessment matrix. There's criteria. I can't give specifics as to, I should say I won't give specifics as to what our tactical decisions are and the things that we do as part of that threat assessment. What I can tell you, it's very comprehensive. It includes not only a district response, but a law enforcement response as well as where necessary. And our staff is instructed, regardless of the threat or whether we perceive it to be credible or not, we follow that matrix, and we allow that to determine whether that threat is deemed credible or not. And it's, we did that. We've done that the same, and every one of these threats that we've gotten in the district post Oxford has been handled the same way. And you have to do it. You have to do it the same way, because when you do it the same way, you become proficient at it, and you're less likely to miss things. You're less likely to have incidents, because you you tried to go with a fast route. We don't take a fast route. We take as much time as necessary to properly vet these threats and do them the same way, for that reason, to make sure that we don't miss anything.
Okay. And in conjunction with the first question, a parent asked, is a student who may be in question, who may be the subject of an investigation of a threat to the school, allowed to return to school before an investigation is completed or before it has closed?
So that's a bit of a tricky question. The answer is yes and no. In most cases, the answer is no, they will not be allowed. When we're investigating an incident of a threat that involves a student, that student is most likely, depending on where the matrix takes us, that student is most likely, in most cases, I should say, going to be placed on administrative exclusion pending a multitude of things, one of which is a comprehensive investigation into the threat to determine whether it's a credible threat or not. Things that we look at, does the person have the means to carry out a threat? There's a multitude of things that we look at. Before that student can return to school, we have to, number one, ensure that threat is not credible. Number two, in some cases, those students have to receive a independent risk assessment by a third party prior to returning to school. And then there's a law enforcement component that works into that as well, where we work with local law enforcement to make a decision whether or not or when to return those students to school. So, and then beyond that, there's a whole discipline component, a violation of student code of conduct and things like that can occur independent of whatever the police department investigation does and any potential criminal charges that may come out of making a threat against a school. There's, so once we investigate, there's kind of two paths that these things go. There's a law enforcement path where the police department's going to do their investigation and they're going to submit their findings to the Wayne County prosecutor, who will make a charging decision. Is it a crime? Did that person commit a crime? And is the prosecutor going to issue criminal charges against them? And these are serious criminal charges that could include felony threat charges. And then there's the side where our building administrator, working in conjunction with our level leaders, are going to review it from a violation of student code of conduct. And then there's potential disciplinary ramifications as well from in the district. So in some cases, we look at these and we're able to determine very quickly the context of the threat or what occurred, and the student is allowed back into school and subsequent to some discipline or whatever the case may be. But I would say that in the majority of cases, if not really all cases, those students are placed on administrative exclusion while we thoroughly vet those threats and the nature of them.
Okay, and I apologize. There was another section. So the parent had also asked, is there a risk assessment plan to evaluate the safety of that scenario? I apologize that I didn't include that, but as you were just describing, that seems to be connected, but I'll let you.
Yeah, we do have a risk assessment component to it. And again, we have to look at each individual case differently, and we handle the matrix the same, but each case has its own nuances or what occurred. And so that we let our protocols and our matrix take us to where we need to go next. And so each piece, as we start checking off boxes and we start answering questions, that will take us to where we have to go next. And whether that's an independent risk assessment, whether that's risk assessment in conjunction with our, with local law enforcement, those are the steps that we would take next.
Okay. The next question is, what is being done in our district to be sure that nothing further occurs by a student who makes a threat at school or online? Who would be involved to ensure that safety?
So it's a kind of a two-part question. So what is being done by the district? I can't predict what, when our next threat is going to happen. My job is to prepare for worst case scenarios, prepare for what could happen, and then prepare the district and our staff for what could happen. And that's exactly what we're doing through the review and update of our emergency operations plans. That's what we're doing through Alice. Part of what, you know, Eric missed on is that not only is he doing Alice training where he's talking about those 5 options, he's also going through each building with our staff and covering specific areas where we can improve upon safety. We're doing building evaluations. As we go through this bond process, all the updates are getting a security review. We're enhancing our technology capabilities for safety and security. We're redoing locks. There's a multitude of things that are occurring district-wide. Since I came to the district a little over a year ago, and this is all things that Superintendent Merritt was committed to. And when I came to the district, I had a laundry list of things that we needed to work on, and I'm committed, and superintendent and her leadership team are committed. Safety is our priority, and we're going to continue, you know, every time we look at something, we're going to make evaluations, and we're going to make changes that are necessary to keep our schools safe. And, you know, from putting up, you know, vehicle barriers at the high school to limit traffic to, you know, the list goes on and on. There's a multitude of things that we're doing. And again, a lot of that was in place and working towards prior to the lockdown and the incident that occurred in Oxford. But really to, again, we can't predict, but we will prepare. That's the important piece. As far as whose responsibility it is for safety, I mean, it's really all of ours. As I said early on, it takes a village. My title is Director of School Safety and Security, and I take that very serious. And so my focus is on safety and security. Of course, that's what the district has hired me to do. But when we're looking at keeping our students safe, it goes well beyond me. It goes well beyond my security staff. I mean, it starts at home with families, having conversations with their kids, discussing the importance in responsible phone ownership. These threats, a lot of these threats that we responded to as a district could have been avoided had kids understood the seriousness of what they were doing. And it starts with these, you have to monitor what your kids are doing on Snapchat. You have to monitor what your kids are doing on Facebook and Instagram. We had parents that added to these threat rumors on social media. That's unacceptable. We all have to collaboratively work together, from parents to students to staff, to safety, security, to law enforcement, to first responders. We all have a role in this, and it's important that each one of us takes it serious and we work together to improve safety for our students, because that's what they deserve. They deserve to be able to come to school safe and learn. And it's incumbent upon us, not only as I say educators, but educators and those of us in the security world, but it's incumbent upon our students and our families as well to work and kind of share in that responsibility.
Thank you so much for responding to the questions that were sent in. For anyone else who is here on the Zoom meeting, are there any other questions for Josh?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. My name's Michael Hurd, and I have a kindergartner that goes to Erickson, so I wasn't too familiar with all the details, obviously, because I don't have a kid that goes to the high school. But one thing that stuck out that when you were describing the events was you said that there was these student walkouts, and you were concerned about the safety, kind of, because it was a little bit of a touchy time with what happened at Oxford. My question is, why are we allowing these walkouts? Like, I don't see why walking out of a school is remembering the victims. It seems like more of a protest kind of action to me, and I don't know what they would be protesting either. So if it sounded like you were concerned about the safety, but then we let these kids sort of walk out of school, and I don't really get that.
Yeah, so I'll touch a little bit on it. I don't know if Superintendent Merritt wants to add to it. So we don't necessarily let these things occur. What happens typically is we have various student groups within the park, and those student-led groups oftentimes will have various initiatives for various different things. So When the incident occurred in Florida, they did a student-led, I'll call it a memorial to honor the victims of that school shooting. In that particular case, that student group, that student organization worked with building administrators to do it in a controlled fashion. What happens is, again, the social media thing. So I learned of this student walkout the night before at approximately 7 o'clock that evening. And it was a Snapchat message that was widely being shared among students. So we have over 6,000 students. That message gets shared rapidly amongst those students. And so now trying to control 6,000 students that are intent on walking out to honor the victims of Oxford becomes very challenging for us as a district, and to do that in a safe manner. And those are why we made those decisions, because again, it's not a matter of letting these students do it. It's a matter of controlling the campus, keeping the kids secure, and doing it in a fashion that allows, if we're going to allow it, that allows them to do it in a peaceful and manner that is least disruptive to the school. So Superintendent Merritt, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit. You've had more experience with them than some of these than I
They
have.
definitely nailed it. It's a situation where we're not, I would say, condoning or promoting. Of course, our number one priority is for them to be in class. As you heard the numbers earlier, you have 6,200 kids, 350 plus adults that are in the building. So it's important that we maintain that structure and be able to control that environment in a situation. If, even if 1,000 students were to walk out and we had a scenario where, our buildings are shut down and then students are out, and there's that risk that could be potentially put upon our students, they're still our responsibility. So we can't just say, hey, you're not allowed to, which we would say those aren't the rules. You don't get an excused absence. You're not able, we're not condoning or promoting that. But at the same time, having to think in a safety perspective, not locking kids out. So really trying to work when administration becomes aware of a situation to try to pull the students together. If most of the time it isn't organized for them, something that they're trying to, some message they're trying to send, and let them know, in terms of our rules, that that's not excused, it's not condoned. Encourage them to, at times, conversations around working within the community, maybe doing something offside of campus. Number one priority is staying in school. And if there is something that is going to continue to happen, then in a proactive manner to say, if this is going to happen, we still need to ensure their safety and make sure that we have plans in place proactively to address that, and not having students just out and about during the school day. So with that, even I think in the morning, as Director Meyer shared on that particular morning, beyond just some of the planned activities that were going on, because of the social media frenzy in students, in that particular post, it said CHS. And that was the incident that he said was a cut and paste from a situation in New Mexico. But without knowing, kids are thinking this is Canton High School. We vetted it. We know it's clear. We have our teachers, 300 teachers trying to say to students, it's okay. At the same time, kids are seeing on social media, they don't know. So they're then walking out of class. And so when we have to make that decision to secure the environment, some are doing the proper channels by going to the attendance office and trying to work with their parents and check out. Others are leaving. And so again, making sure that we have accountability and can maintain their safety really led to that decision. So kind of a long answer to say, we absolutely do not condone the walking out. We prioritize being in class. We do not excuse. And that's not even within our board policy, what would be considered allowable practice. At the same time, realizing that if somebody exercises what they believe is their First Amendment rights, we still have a responsibility to keep all students safe. So try to work with them proactively to redirect their activity in a more structured fashion outside of the school day. If it happens within the school day, making sure that we ensure their safety through a process is really kind of the plan approach.
Yeah, and again, that's one of those things where I go back. It takes all of us. If parents are hearing their kids at home talk about a walkout, we need parents to discourage, students from doing that. There's a proper way to memorialize and honor the victims of Oxford. A student-led walkout without administrative or district support can create its own set of issues, its own set of safety concerns. So, we would, as the superintendent, there's a proper channel and a proper means for students to do that should they want to memorialize the victims of Oxford or any incident for that matter.
I
I
actually
had
have
a question.
oh, go ahead.
So my question was around communications to parents. I know in my situation, and I heard from a lot of other parents that they were receiving texts or calls from their P-CCS student after the lockdown was initiated. And I don't know exactly how long it was, but it felt like a really long, I think from understandably, it felt like a really long time before we got any kind of official communication from the district about what was happening. And I was just wondering if somebody could speak to like what the expectation is. I understand there's a lot going on in that moment, but where does the communication piece fit in?
Yeah, so I will let Superintendent Merritt and Nick kind of touch on that, but keep in mind that it's always going to be faster for your student to send a text message to a parent than it is for us to get a proper official communication out through our systems. It's also, I think, important to note when we talk about these lockdowns, one of the things, and I know that students, these things are going to happen and they're going to try to get on their phone and call their parent, text their parent. We encourage students, and I'm not saying don't do that, but what we're encouraging students is to minimize that cell phone usage during a lockdown for a couple of reasons. Number one, a cell phone can become realistically a tracking device. If there's a bad guy that is in a school that's targeting a specific person, they can use cell phones to do that. But more importantly, one of the things we learned during that lockdown is there was such an increased use of cell phones in and around that park at that particular time. It became difficult for us to get phone communication and text communication out for emergency purposes that we were trying to do to manage the incident. And so when those cell phone towers become overwhelmed because of the amount of usage, there's nothing that I can do, there's nothing that Nick can do, and there's nothing that Superintendent Merritt can do to get those cell towers to traffic down to where we can utilize telecommunication devices for the emergency in and of itself. So again, we encourage students, I'm not going to tell a student never to send a message to their parents saying I'm okay. As a father, I would certainly want to know that my kids were okay, and just a simple text message knowing they're okay is important to me. But also keep in mind that we have an emergency to manage, and we're trying to we need telecommunications as part of handling that emergency. So I don't know if Nick or Superintendent Merritt, if you want to take that question about the communication piece.
I do want to jump in and say, as frustrating as it may be, our oath and commitment is first safety. And so we need to make sure that we're securing that environment, and communication is so key, and making sure that it's timely and making sure that it's accurate. And so the very first order of business is to make sure that we secure the students to try to, if it's a threat, locate that threat, if it's real or not. And then at the same time, as everyone is working within a command center, we're preparing communications once we've secured that. So we have our staff that's able to man the phones, get something out to parents. We're working now with what, for the first time, we were able to utilize, and Nick can talk a little bit more about that, trying to get more timely communication out with that text message feature that parents have to opt into that, I believe, in order to get that. Or I don't know, you can speak to that, Nick. But again, just in terms of the series of events, we also need to communicate internally with staff as well. So there's just really that communication protocol that we need to follow to ensure that first we're securing the location, the safety first, then communicate internally to staff so that everyone has a shared understanding, especially when you're looking at P-CCS and the fact that we have 3 different buildings and may have a situation in one building that still impacts the whole campus. And so to make sure that every staff member has that information and can give proper direction to those through a safety perspective within the building, and then get that communication out. A lot of times it's going to be high level communication just to say, this is what is going on. We have control of the building. A more detailed communication will follow. And then really in that protocol, kind of just trying to foreshadow later this evening, we'll give you more details. We'll tell you what the next day will be. So I know that communication is always going to be something that is criticized, and people are going to want information right away, especially when it comes to your children being in that building, which we understand. But again, the first commitment is to making sure that we are ensuring the safety within that building, and then being able to communicate as quickly as possible what's going on.
Monica captured all that perfectly. I'll just clarify a couple things just in methods. The text message that we've been utilizing of late, it's not an opt-in. We're using our robocall system. It's a new feature that we've enhanced, and so far the feedback's been really positive. And I will say that in that situation, it became a real plus for us to be able to communicate quickly and get that message out and not give people, in some cases, the cumbersome aspect of listening to a full message. They were able to get in on their phone and see it quickly. I will also add, just Josh and Monica said everything perfectly, but we're really working shoulder to shoulder too with law enforcement, in this particular case, Canton Police Department, when we consider communications, and it is an investigation situation on site. And so we're really following a lot of lead and a lot of direction from our law enforcement too on what we are able to communicate, what the best timing is of communication, and so on and so forth. So it's a real team effort along with our law enforcement representatives for sure. And we will certainly continue with our text message as a regular outlet. Like I said, the feedback's been really positive for that so far, and we'll use that in any situation like this moving forward.
Thank you. And I would also endorse the positive feedback around the text messaging. That was really helpful that day.
I have one more question. You can go, Antoinette. Sorry, I already had a question, so you can go.
Oh, well, it's okay. Thank God you guys do allow the kids to have their cell phones, in the high school at the park, because it is so big. I mean, my son was there, obviously, as many others. And I don't know what I would do if he couldn't hadn't communicated with me via texting or whatnot. I mean, that was everything when, communication was already said that you cannot go up to the park, do not come up to the campus, all the things that we couldn't do. At least we were able to have access to our kids in that, very traumatic experience. And during that time, my question was, did you ever actually find the person who held, and I know some things you can't, disclose, but if there was, from what you said, that a person had a firearm or a weapon, did we ever find the person who was allegedly had the firearm? Because again, you said that there was nothing found after, the 5-hour lockdown, after sweeping the entire building. I think that's the part that's unsettling for me and a lot of other parents, is just the conclusion. And I know we're not at a conclusion, but it's just, there was nothing anywhere, or did we just never find the person who had it?
Yeah, so I can answer that question to some level. But I want to back up to the cell phones, because I think there's one other important piece that's missing, and we need to talk about, is that having the cell phone communication with parents is great. But one of the things that we experienced that afternoon, and we're going to talk about, is we had parents text messaging their kids, telling them to jump out of windows and run away from the building. Keep in mind that is not what we want students to do. If you can run away from the incident, we're teaching them to do that. But when we have the building in a lockdown situation and we have things relatively under control, safe and secure, having your student disobey the teacher who's providing them with that guidance and run out of a classroom could be very dangerous in that situation when we are searching a building with armed police officers, because that's what we have to do. So, I think we have to be careful with what the messages we're sharing with our kids during those incidences. By all means, if a student can run away from an incident prior to being locked down in the classroom, there's, again, techniques that we talk about with that, Alice, but we have to be careful with that messaging. To answer the question specific about to what was found, we were able to, utilizing, again, some of the investigative techniques, we were able to identify the persons of interest that we believe to be involved in the incident. Through those investigations, no weapon was ever found, and all parties have been interviewed by law enforcement that were involved, that we believe were involved in the incident. As far as, was there a weapon at the school? I wasn't there when this was observed, so I can't say. What we do know is that subsequent searches of once we got all the kids out and we searched, we were never able to locate a weapon. And that part of the investigation continues to be handled by the Canton Police Department. I know it's, I know everybody is looking for concrete answers here, and unfortunately, I can't give those today. I can tell you that through the investigation, we identified everybody that we believed had any contact or involvement in the incident, and that information was turned over to the Canton Police Department for investigation, not only that afternoon, but that whatever part of that investigation that continues. That's the best that I can give at this point. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
I'm going to share this, and if I'm saying too much also, then correct me and shut me up. But I would also say, I would just at this point, even using that word, not confirmed sighting either. So there is a part, it's still ongoing. So as I heard the question being asked, the report of, and I heard the word alleged, but like there's not that confirmation that even that sighting was. Do you know what I mean? So that's still a part of that investigation in terms of what is being investigated. Is that fair to say, Director Meyer?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I think the other, again, and I'm not, I'll give a hypothetical situation, and I'm not saying that this has anything to do with what occurred on December 9th, but previously in incidences that we've had at schools, kids have taken airsoft guns or toy guns or BB guns. And those type of airsoft guns, toy guns, BB guns usually have an orange tip on the front of the barrel so that it can be readily identifiable as not a firearm. They've removed those tips. They've made rap music videos. They've made other types of music videos with that firearm. And in some cases, they've shared that, or they brought that airsoft gun to school. Without that orange tip, many of those firearms look extremely real. And so until we determine whether it was a real firearm, a facsimile firearm, a toy firearm, we're going to treat it as though it is a legitimate threat, and we're going to investigate it. We're going to do everything we did. As far as that day goes, if I looking back on it, knowing what I know today, would I change anything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We would have done it the exact same way. We would have went into a lockdown. It was done swiftly, and the actions that were taken that afternoon were appropriate based on the information that we were given that afternoon. We'll see what ultimately comes out of the investigation. And I'll be honest, sometimes we don't ever get the answers that we want. We may not know. Some of the people involved had left campus. So that, there's a time between when I can't go into great detail. I could just assure you that it has been a very exhaustive investigation. The Canton Police Department has done a phenomenal job. They've been very thorough. Hours upon hours upon hours of video has been reviewed. And we will not stop until we get, until we can get clarity. But again, I don't know that we'll ever have complete clarity that some people are seeking. But I can assure you that the Canton Police Department has done a very thorough and intensive investigation into the matter.
Was there an effort to confirm the sighting prior to initiating the lockdown or the lock-in?
So I guess I would look for your definition of confirm. Absolutely, we vet that information, and we absolutely try to confirm the validity of the information. And yes, that was done that afternoon. When it comes to the safety of our kids and our staff, we are always going to err on the side of caution. In this particular incident, I will not reveal the identity of who gave us the information or how we obtained the information. I can assure you that information was vetted, and there were multiple interviews that took place in a very, very short amount of time prior to calling the lockdown. And I will say a very short amount of time, and very specific questions that were asked to try to determine the validity of what we were dealing with. That in conjunction with utilizing the district's video system as well.
So you learned something in that confirmation that then prompted, you don't have to say what it was, obviously, but
I will say that the information that we obtained was believed to be credible. Was believed to be credible at that time. I can say that, and that is what prompted the lockdown.
Okay.
I had no reason not to believe it as being credible at the time that we called the lockdown.
Is that, I just want to make sure, I know this is a topic that has been at the forefront of so many of our parents' minds. I want to thank everybody for being very serious and very cautious and mindful of our questions as well as our discussion. Josh, I want to thank you immensely for making yourself very accessible to us and taking our questions, as well as the detailed description that you've given us. We've really appreciated not just this meeting, but as well as November, your description. I felt like I had a very clear understanding of what our security measures, not the system itself, but what had been in place and what had been thought about, which was somewhat of a comfort during that lockdown, which was what every parent has a worry of happening. I did want to mention I had been talking to my kids on the topic of the cell phone matter. And it was always, I know a lot of our board and others know that I taught junior high, and I've led lockdowns with classes of mine. And I have always told my kids, let me know you're okay, but I want your eyes and your ears on your teacher. And I think that that's one conversation that I was glad that I had repeated. Both of my kids know I want them to be attentive to their teacher and attentive to whoever's in front of them, and not get involved with the, so much the messaging. I do understand communicating and letting people letting them know that their parents that they're okay, but really being attentive to those directions that are given, how important that is. So thank you very much, Josh, for coming here today and answering questions and giving us details. I know that our whole parent council board and representatives, we all appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I think again, we can't do this without parent support. We can't do this without everybody jumping in. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't add, if you see something, say something. We really need students to report things that are happening, and we're going to vet that. And sometimes I'd rather call 3 lockdowns and find nothing than not call 1 lockdown and have something bad happen to anybody. So, if you see something, if you hear something, report it. If you're not comfortable going to a teacher or a staff member, use the okay to say. It's an anonymous tip line set up through the Michigan State Police. We will take every threat serious. We will investigate it as thoroughly as we possibly can, and we will not leave any stone unturned or we'll involve any agency that we need to make sure our staff and students are safe.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I wanted to honor our agenda. We had previously noted that we were going to have Amy Williker Brown talk in connection with the lockdown, talking about mental health of our students and communicating with our students on the topic of violence. And I wanted to, we are going to have Amy here on we're going to try to have Amy back here on another date. But I am going to include in our minutes, Leah Babinski, who is a counselor in our, at Salem High School, was able to forward to me some resources that I think would be very helpful for any parents at this time who are, whether it be because of the lockdown or because of COVID and quarantine and isolation, additional resources for families in supporting children's mental health, talking to children about violence. There are tips and parents for teachers. Actually, I will send this. I think I would be able to copy these links and resources and send them to everyone who is in the meeting. Or if you're listening to the meeting on YouTube at a future time, please feel free to reach out to us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com, and I'm happy to also send these resources to you as well. I know that with our Parent Council board in the last 2 years, we have made a very earnest focus to address mental health, not just when it is a crisis or a situation like we had in December, but throughout the course of the year. So please feel free to reach out, and I will also send these resources to everyone who is on the call, that I have their email address, and I will make them accessible in our minutes as well. I'll give these to Andrea Schultz to include in our minutes. So that being said, we are going to focus on our district updates, and I will let both Superintendent Merritt and Nick address any district updates and changes that we can converse about tonight.
All right, thank you, President Hart. You want to be principal? We probably have an opening, we're probably hiring.
Well, we'll talk after the meeting.
So I appreciate just giving, I think what's on everybody's mind, of course, has been COVID-19. So I just thought starting off with a little update on that. Our school community did receive an updated communication from me on Friday evening as it relates to updated guidelines for isolation and quarantine. These were guidelines that were issued by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Just to back up a little bit, as we know, a couple of weeks ago, the CDC issued new guidance around the Omicron variant is in particular, but all areas of COVID-19 in terms of quarantine guidelines. Those were implemented for the general public, but schools were carved out of that guidance. Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is who adopted those guidelines, carved K-12 schools out. We, of course, take our direction from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, but more closely aligned with the Wayne County Health Department. So really, when you look at the state, they give this overall guidance. They instruct school districts to work directly with their local school department. Wayne County Health Department also adopted their guidelines as well and applied those to K-12 schools and had some additional guidance around close contact quarantines. And so we were kind of waiting to get an understanding of what that was and how we would then implement that. And Plymouth Canton issued that notice on Friday. And really with those quarantine guidelines, that reduction is as long as someone is asymptomatic, reducing that time from 10 days to 5 days. And that person then could return if they're asymptomatic, and all of the requirements that are there. If they still have symptoms, then they would remain on the 10-day quarantine. Also with the close contact, really the idea around with this recent surge, schools being low risk settings, that we are experiencing high areas of transmission within our community, but we're not having large incidents of secondary transmission in school. So that means students or staff may come into the school and they are positive, but they're not then spreading or transmitting within the school. Now, when we look at that, and CDC, MDHHS, Wayne County Health Department is really focusing on the efforts on those positive cases, making sure that those are identified. If they're a school associated case, making sure that the proper quarantine protocols are put in place, but then really looking at this idea that in a high level of transmission, all of us need to think about you are possibly exposed. And it's more effort on focusing on the positive case, giving a notification that there has been a positive case, and then all of us monitoring for symptoms during this time period. So that really was kind of the rationale behind their change. As we've said from the beginning, we are educators. We're not health agencies or officials, so we do follow that guidance, and that's why we work to implement. And so just making sure that we're looking then at other mitigation factors that are in place as they're reducing the quarantine guidelines, trying to make sure that we're also ensuring the other things that we have in place that are being followed and enforced. One being the mask guidelines, and that is a Wayne County Health Department public health order. So we as a school district are following that public health order until the time that as a community, we are in moderate levels of transmission for 14 consecutive days. That's the guidance that they've given us from the health department. So that's still in effect. I'm also looking at some of the updated guidance from the CDC as it relates to large gatherings over 100. So we did some work to say, are there situations that, you know, when we look at the risk reward that are over 100 that we could potentially either postpone or cancel right now while we're during high levels of spread. For example, we had a cluster concert, which would have brought all of our 4th grade students together in Salem Auditorium for a presentation. We decided to postpone that during the time. You know, want the kids to have that experience, but not worth the risk of high levels of transmission. Another piece we're looking at is our lunch protocols and how can we continue to maximize space within the lunchroom, reduce times where students are unmasked while they're eating, just to try to ensure that we're doing our part to try to minimize transmission to the greatest extent possible. So making some of those adjustments as well. When we look at our athletic venues at the high school, again, maximizing spacing, so utilizing more of the bleachers that weren't utilized before, just to make sure that we can spread out our families and our spectators. At the middle schools where we don't have that much space within our gyms, they did institute a 2 spectator limit for each athletic participant, and that will go on. They'll continue to monitor, but I know that that'll go on through the month of January so far. When we look at our Wallet School Committee and the work that we're doing with our partners in there, there's projection, as you've heard at the time period, it's like a 4 to 6 week projection in terms of this surge. So it is hopeful that we'll peak and then come back on the other side as quickly as we entered into it. The big impact for all of us has been on staffing levels because of the quarantines and the high levels of spread. When I say to you, over the Christmas break or that winter holiday, our nurses had to deal with hundreds of cases coming back from the holiday. Not coming back meaning that they physically made it back, but people that were exposed throughout the holiday and had to then still, you have to handle each case to determine what are the proper quarantine protocols. I do want to clarify with transparency. People have questioned, you know, this transparency reporting. Well, if we had these cases, I know so many people are out. Why don't we see them on the website? The transparency reporting is for school associated cases. So there's a window within 48 hours of a positive case. If that person was on a school grounds, a school facility, then that would be something that's reported. Over winter break, for example, if the student or staff member had not been on campus, that's not a school reported case. So it will not be on the website. However, it is something that our staff has to work through to make sure that they have the proper quarantine guidelines in place. And that took a lot of time for our nurses to work through and you know, each positive case, sometimes that might be, you know, 10, 20, even up to 30 calls that they're making around that one positive case. So at this point, those are all caught up. The ones that are school associated are reported on the website, and they're continuing to do their due diligence around just the identification of positive cases, the case notification letters, and just helping our whole school system just to get adjusted to this most recent change. We are really, I'm going to say, thankful for the alignment of the guidelines. At the same time, you know, in terms of being able, when people are safe to return, to get people back in school, that's always our #1 goal, is to be in person. We do believe that that is the best environment for most students. And our goal is to stay in person, but when we are safely able to do so. So at the same time that, you know, we're adjusting and adopting these guidelines, we really are emphasizing the importance of keeping your kids home if you are feeling sick or displaying COVID-like symptoms, even if it is you're not sure, but always err on the side of caution, because we truly are trying to secure the in-person environment. really emphasizing testing protocols, which has been a challenge because we know that testing has not always been as accessible in communities. Today, on a federal level, most of you probably have heard that they announced that every home has the ability to go online and apply for at least 4. I think they're going to send to every resident that applies, home that applies for COVID test kits. We as a school district applied and were approved for the Michigan Backpack Program, which would allow every student and every staff member to receive a test kit. Unfortunately, with supply chain in Michigan, we only have received 9,444 test kits. So we're not at a place where we can just give everybody one. So really looking at how do we utilize the resources that we have to get those tests in the hands of those that are, positive so that they can test to return have access to those. But just working with, as many programs that we can to get the resources of tests in the hands of our community, working with vaccination clinics, continuing. We've had 2 successful clinics, December, January. We have another one. Nick, do you know the date in February?
No, I only have the January. I was going to announce that. I don't have the February date yet, but as soon as we do, we'll be posting it and promoting it.
Okay, and so continuing to partner with vaccination clinics, and once again, just use all of the tools that are at our disposal. There were questions early on to say we're at this high level of surge, and how were we shut down many years, 2 years ago, and we had less, the transmission wasn't as high, and why are we open? And really the answer to that question is we have so many more tools available to us than we did in March 2020. And we have understanding of the virus, and we have, vaccinations and testing and all of these protocols to really help us safely keep our schools open for in-person learning. I will say with all of that, the reality is if we're ever at a time when we need to move a classroom or a grade level or a building to a remote environment because of either the challenge to staffing, meaning we do not have enough adults to keep the building safely open for in-person learning, or the number of people that are out on quarantine has impacted the continuity of learning. That could still be a decision that we make. I do want to put those metrics out there again that we have used. They have not changed since the start of the pandemic. We look at a classroom situation. If we have greater than 50% of student staff out of that classroom due to a quarantine situation, that triggers a case review to say, does this classroom need to go into a virtual situation? So that's over 51% is, over 50% is usually 51% triggers a conversation. That's usually an elementary type of metric. When you're looking at secondary, it's a little more difficult. They're in 6 different classes. And so we look at a 25% standard. Sometimes we use that for a grade level. If a particular grade level has been hit hard and over 25% of that grade level is out, that could trigger that case review. Or if over 25% of the entire school is out based on quarantine, then that would trigger a case review to see if we need to make a decision to move something to remote. I do want to say, even in the midst of all of the cases that were that we found ourselves coming back from winter break, our attendance threshold has still been relatively stable. So 75% is that threshold to count the day. There's no flexibility. So in order to count the day and not have to make it up, we have 75% of our students attending. Consistently since the return from break, we've had about, the lowest is 85%. So 85%, 86%, 87% that very first week. And then of course now our numbers are getting a little bit higher. So I know that in certain pockets, at certain schools were hit harder than others. But in general, when you look at our district attendance, it's been averaging between 85 and 87% the first week and much higher this week. And so those are kind of, I don't know, President Hart, maybe I want to stop at just COVID before I give a couple more updates. I wanted to just talk briefly about transportation and also dynamic plan, but I feel like maybe a COVID pause and take some questions around everything that I just shared might be a good way to go.
Are there any questions for Ms. Merritt? We could take kind of a pause just on the topic of COVID. Any questions that anyone has? This is probably a clarification. When you say that our attendance district-wide has to be, you said 80% I'm sorry, 75% or higher. And that wouldn't obviously have to be related to COVID or associated with school associated virus contraction. It would be just overall attendance, no matter.
Yes, that's a great question. It is the overall attendance as a district. We have to have 75% of our students in school in order to count as a day of instruction. And if we don't, we have what they call 6 acts of God days. So that's when we have a snow day, for example, or if there's a power outage or something along those lines that makes us shut down school, we can only excuse 6 of those days. And anything beyond that, we would have to make those up in throughout the school year, mostly in the summer. So 75% for any absences, COVID included.
And maybe, I know you had sent out the changes and described the changes in regard to quarantining, changing from 10 days to 5 days. And I know the CDC has been discussing those changes. In regard to that, is there any conversation among principals to teachers or giving some really good instructions on mask wearing? Just because if there is a change to a 5-day quarantine, how important that mask wearing would be an appropriate mask wearing. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Well-fitted mask is key. There have been conversations around, even with the Omicron variant, for example, people have asked, are we taking recommendations to change our masking, the types of masks? And we aren't at this point. I know that there were a couple of school districts that were requiring KN95. We're not requiring KN95. We do say the best mask is the mask that is worn. And so for some kids that are more comfortable in their cloth mask, the only, I think the only mask that we have not allowed since the beginning was, we didn't allow the gaiters. But with that, we do have KN95 available at every building for our staff if they want those. We have plenty of those on hand for anybody that wants them. Our education is within our classrooms, but also have to depend on families at home to continue. We have to do this together through our communications departments, through our nursing departments, the creation of, we have some videos that we've created to just say, how do you wear a proper mask and to make sure, Mr. Brandon, I don't know, we have, I know we have those that are already out there and there are plans for additional masking videos and educational resources to go out.
Yeah, we've had discussions about that, and we know that, the more we get out about it, the better at this point. So we'll continue that work for sure.
So it is kind of the collective, and we have, for the most part, had, compliance of our students in terms of adhering to this. That in itself hasn't been a challenge, but just the proper fitting has often, so that reminder to pull it up if it comes below the nose or things along those lines. So a continued collective effort about well-fitted masks is very key, and especially at this time when we have a change in the mitigation plans.
Any other questions? No, you are perfectly okay to move on to your next topic.
All right, the other source of stress, one source of stress is transportation. So from the beginning of the year, we have been impacted, as many have, on the national bus driver shortage. We have traditionally, we had 116, I think, routes here in our district early on. We had to condense those routes down to 108, just to try to get as many kids on a bus as we could. We have close to 10,000 students that ride the bus. Just as a little bit of requirement by law, we are only required to provide transportation for special education students that have that in their IEP. We as a district elect to provide transportation for all students. In doing so, we work to try to condense some of those routes early on, recognizing for many it felt like, well, why didn't you do this over the summer? We literally had people that were quitting the weekend. It was, that long weekend. We had drivers that quit that Friday before school started. Various reasons, most pandemic related, in terms of worried about health and safety and various reasons. condensed those routes. And even with that, we had 12 routes that were not covered, 12 general education routes that were not covered. A lot of protocols were in place in terms of even making it more difficult for drivers to be hired in terms of their credentialing. It just takes an awful long time. So we're working with our transportation partners, just trying to get new drivers in their seat. But as we get new drivers in their seat, then we have other drivers that quit. So we had, for quite a while, we thought this was only going to be a couple of weeks, but it felt almost like a revolving door. So we had some families that were without buses since the start of the school year. We then worked with the union group of drivers to do an MOU, a memorandum of agreement, that would allow for this planned suspension of bus routes. So really through that idea of these 108 routes, only 12 routes and families were impacted, but saying, can we share this burden across all routes so that everyone will know in advance, these are your 2 weeks that your bus will be, you'll be without transportation. And then what we do is just rotate the drivers to those initial buses. Bus drivers do get through a system. They're able to choose their route. So they're able to keep their route, their official route, but they're, the bus drivers are working into those other buses that don't have an official driver. So that felt like a great plan. The surge hit. So the idea was that we're going to have this planned rotation. Everybody knows where their 2 weeks are. And then over the break, due to various COVID-related quarantines, isolation, people having to take care of their families, we're still dealing with daily cancellations. And so we're working to try to see, if we know what that daily cancellation will be based on the number of days, we can try to say in advance, this route will be canceled for 5 days or 10 days or whatever that will be. But best laid plans in terms of this more planned route. So everybody knows we're still dealing with the daily impacts of shortages around COVID-related reasons. So, I think we're working to try to, I do want to share here in terms of Durham, they've been a great partner. They give us credit. We do not pay for services that are not rendered. So I've kind of heard that, are you still having to pay when you don't have the drivers? So we do get credit for drivers that we don't have employed. We're able to utilize those credits to try to support our families when they have canceled transportation. So we're offering free before and after school care in our K-8 program. So anybody during that time period where their bus is canceled, if have to be at work early, they can utilize that service to have their student dropped off early, or if they get off work later, they can still utilize that during that time period that it's canceled. So just continuing to work at it. It is not ideal. It is not unique to Plymouth Canton. Again, I think that the planned route is a good way to help plan for, but at the same time, the daily cancellations probably during this time of surge will be something that we're continuing to be impacted for the next few weeks that we're at this high level of spread. The final piece that I just wanted to touch on is more forward thinking. It's just an update on the dynamic plan in the midst of a pandemic. Probably the worst time to do strategic planning, but we couldn't, that was out of our control, the fact that our dynamic plan did expire. So just kind of high level, a dynamic plan really is the strategic plan, the 5-year compass for the work, how we do our work here in the district. So our plan did expire. And in January, we started the work on doing a new plan to really determine our strategic themes and our goals and our objectives for the next 5 years. So we've gone through, had some stakeholder input early on to say, what are the challenges that we're facing here as a district? What are our opportunities? How can we be better as a district? What are our needs? How do we align our resources? Some of the common themes that came out of that work: improved communication, more supports for students, working on making sure that all students feel represented and welcomed and included in all of our school environments, making sure that we have a lens on community partnerships and engagement and our enrollment issue, and really wanting to be just an innovator and provide great educational experiences and continue to do that for our students. So through those, some objectives were finalized through Board of Education, through the steering committee. We've reviewed those at the last board meeting in terms of a draft of that. We're bringing that back now. We'll do a presentation at the next board meeting, which will be a first read, giving opportunities for any further feedback before then going to a final approval at the first meeting in February. From there, each department really just uses a one-year action plan to say, these are the objectives and what are we going to do this year to really work to fulfill those objectives. And then every presentation that we do, all of the work, our financial resources, our human resources, everything is aligned to those objectives to just make sure that we're streamlining and really focused on the direction that we're going. So really excited through the midst of it all that we've gotten to this place, and hopefully we'll be able to put that dynamic plan in place and then really work on marketing and communicating so that everybody has a shared understanding of what the vision and what the plans are as we move forward. So with that, we'll stop with those high-level updates and entertain any questions that you may have about transportation or dynamic plan or anything else that I didn't talk about.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I had a quick question. This wasn't regarding the busing or the dynamic plan, but it was just a quick suggestion for PTOs. Is there a way that we can have like an electronic way to get money for field trips and for fundraisers and things, and to not only do cash and check via, we've heard that from the board office, we can only allow parents to give cash or checks, for different things that we have. Is there any way we can streamline some type of electronic way? Like I know even at the high school, we use RevTrack, there's so many other electronic ways, especially with COVID, where we can obtain money, PayPal, there's Venmo, I mean, there's everything. Is that something we can do or look towards the future? Like, is there something we can implement going forward?
So
instead of using cash and check?
Right. That is a question that I can take back. I know as a district, yes, we have. So when we think about food service, for example, so we work to collect funds in different manners there electronically. But as it relates to PTO, I will just need to find out through Ms. Piaz, are there options available? So I will ask that question and get that back to Judy to communicate to this group.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You must have been incredibly clear and comprehensive today, Monica, because I've never seen so few questions for you.
Either incredibly clear or so confusing. They're like, what did she just talk about?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So regarding the you said that supporting for before and after school care for those people that are affected by not having a bus, that really has never been communicated that I've seen. And so is it just for those people for those 2 weeks that they don't have a bus? And
yeah,
and I'm wondering how that would work, because like at Workman, there's never any openings for before or after school care.
When we send out the communication in terms of an update for those that were without busing services, that's where we communicated Lisa Trucks, who's our extended day coordinator. We put that information in those communications to say, if you need that, then to reach out. And so because we're not looking at the waitlisted program, and so they just kind of working with her to get that coverage there. So it's separate, meaning that this care is not going to jump someone over a wait list to be a part of the regular extended day service, but to be able to work with Lisa and place students for that rotation only during that time period. So if it is that bus is a 2 week and you need care, a few of those days, you would work with her to coordinate that supervised care during that time.
Right. Understandable. But like I said, like I've read those emails about the transportation for those weeks and I haven't seen that. So
Mr. Brennan, I don't know if when is the last time the transportation communication went out with Lisa's information in that?
We had the transportation that gave the information about January 10th. I'd have to look to confirm that, but it's been in previous communications. I know there was a big one because we got tons of response from it in the last calendar year. It might
be, looking at that feedback, that might be something that we can re-promote as a kind of a push out as well on our communication channels.
Sure, we can do that. Yep, no problem.
And unfortunately, it is only a K-8 scenario because we don't have that at the high school level, but still would, we try to just work with anyone to say, what are the supports? Unfortunately, we're not by law allowed to say, hey, we'll do a cab service or something along those lines, where there's certain things that we can't do, but whatever we're able to do to try to support our families through these times, we definitely just want to keep those lines of communication open to see how we can support.
No, I mean, I think that's awesome if you can provide that. That is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last questions for Monica? Superintendent Merritt, I want to thank you very much for making yourself available for us tonight. I know feels like at this time there's more to say sometimes than we even have space and time for. So I appreciate you making yourself available for us for this meeting. And we appreciate and can't wait to talk to you at a time where we have hopefully even more positive things to talk about from February to May to June.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. I want to, there's one last item I have, and then I'm going to open it up. I know to Nick, there may be a couple other district details. On the topic, when the topic that Josh talked about with our safety and security, I wanted to introduce both Rachel Miller and Nicole Wassel, who have reached out to me and have been discussing a parent interest group that they have begun organizing. And I'll give the floor to Rachel and Nicole to explain what they have been getting together.
Hi, my name is Rachel Miller, and I'm a parent in the district and also a graduate of the district. I have one student at the park and one student that's already graduated that's at Notre Dame St. Mary's. Nicole, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nicole Wassel, also a parent in the district. I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader, and just really concerned about the current state of school safety and the necessary involvement of the community in that moving forward. I'm also a clinical social worker, mental health professional in the area.
So this was kind of a mission. Nicole and I met through a shared desire to do something after Oxford, instead of following the normal outrage post on social media and then kind of fall back into the apathy of not doing anything. And so we got together and have decided to start a coalition that we're calling the Violence Prevention Coalition. And we are following the framework of the safeandsoundschools.org. This is an organization that was started by parents who lost children at Sandy Hook. It kind of goes along with Sandy Hook Promise, but this is a coalition that what our mission is to create the safest possible learning environments for all P-CCS students, staff, and guests through a positive, nonpartisan collaboration with educators and staff, parents, caregivers, students, community members, and organizations to support and assist Plymouth Canton Community Schools in preventing, preparing, responding, and recovering from emergencies and crisis situations. So right now, Nicole and I are in the process of creating that group. We've already spoken and met with Monica and Josh. We also have a meeting set up with the Local Impact Alliance, which is an umbrella of groups in Canton and Plymouth. And we will be starting to gather membership for this group to hopefully make a positive impact and positively collaborate with the district to ensure a safe learning environment for everyone. And making sure that all our kids and all our staff go to school alive and come home alive. Nicole, do you have anything else to?
Yeah, so thank you for introducing the coalition. We have started some Facebook, like just preliminary interest in membership. And I think that we can all sort of wrap our minds around how to help create an emotionally and physically safe environment for our kids to be able to learn and thrive and achieve. So I think that this is really a way that we can all participate in doing something positive for our kids. We have a lot of really great ideas that are. We're really hopeful to be a very actionalized group. If you're interested in membership, we will put the email address for, I think, as a link onto this recording, I'm hoping, so that you can just send an email and be invited to participate in the Facebook group, and then get some notices on, what's the plan to move forward and how we can actionalize some of these projects. We really are hoping to get a lot of student groups involved in actually making some kind of impact and doing some things, as well as getting some assistance from the community to help support our kids. So thanks so much for listening, and Judy, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely. We welcome both of you back to let us know when there are going to be meetings, or if there are things to focus on as far as products or different things to focus action on. So if you could forward us, if you have an email that's specific to the group, or if it's your personal email, we can put that in the minutes so that people are able to reach out and contact you, and let either Rachel or Nicole know that you are interested in this group. Because I think as far as parents are concerned right now, as well as students, we feel like we want to do something but don't know exactly what that is. So I thank you guys very much for putting this group together. And I think, like Rachel said, like rather than venting frustration or anxiety on Facebook, being able to talk about what we can do to make our community and our schools safe for our students, which should be a goal that all of us, right, every one of us can agree on.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And Nick, any last minute district updates?
I'd say 2 last minute ones. And Monica mentioned this earlier, but the next vaccination clinic will be Monday, January 24th from 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Once again in the Canton High School cafeteria, across from the main office by the flagpole, and the little theater is right next to it as well. Pre-registration is required to be part of this. This is a very comprehensive vaccine clinic. There'll be boosters available. You can receive your second dose of the Pfizer vaccine if you received it on January 5th. And it's important for all families to know that a parent's signature is required for anyone under the age of 18 to receive the vaccine. And all students are strongly encouraged to have a parent or guardian present. If anyone's coming for a second dose or a further than second dose, please make sure to bring your vaccination card. Once again, Monday, January 24th at 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. One message for our parent council reps, just, always trying to give you good information to take back to your PTOs. Monica did a great job earlier of talking about our transportation situation. We do post the daily cancellation of routes to the website and to our Facebook and now our Twitter outlets every day that those happen. There have been a couple exceptions, but for the most part, every day those go before 6 a.m. And so just in case there's ever issues with the robocall system, or families aren't, say they're not receiving the calls, it's important to remind them that we do use multiple methods for that communication. It's on the district website and our social media outlets as well. So that's a good thing to take back to your PTOs. And then I'll just act as the EF representative today. We no longer have our good friend Gretchen Ward joining us because she's moved on to a new opportunity outside of the EF, and we wish her so well. I want to thank her so much for everything she did for the students and staff and families in our community. The EF is hard at work as a board of finding the new leadership for the foundation. They're pleased to announce that the Uncorked event will be happening this spring as of right now, and dates and details for how to attend that or get involved in that. That's the annual wine tasting event for those of you that are unfamiliar. A definite P-CCS tradition that has not really been able to take place in person in the last couple of years. Plans are to have that this spring, and we'll be communicating out the daytime and details for that once they are fully confirmed. President Hart, that's it from us. I think we should wrap it up.
Okay. I just want to make an announcement that our next parent council meeting, being that we are making a goal to vary both days, obviously dates and times, to try to make our meetings as accessible to as many families as we can. Our next parent council meeting will take place on Thursday, February 17th at 9:30 a.m. We also have 2 more lunch meetings, both in March and May, and we have another late afternoon meeting as well in April. So you can check out our website after February 17th, 9:30 a.m., which is our next meeting. You can check out the connected to our agenda. We have our list of upcoming meetings as well as posted on our website for P-CCS Parent Council. I would very much like to thank our Parent Council Board for being here and giving their time and effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Brandon, for helping us with communication and technology. Superintendent Merritt, Mr. Josh Meyer, and as well as Eric Kolke, all of our counseling department staff who connected us with information, which we will make available on our parent council minutes. Carly Reyes for helping us with communication. Thank you all very much. And I am looking for a motion to adjourn our meeting. Do I get, can I get that motion, please?
I motion.
Thank you. And I'll take, was that a second as well? I think I had two motions there.
I'll second, yeah.
Thank you very much for all staying on for the late meeting. I think it was well worth it. I appreciate all of you for being here, and have a very nice evening.